and welcome back to a brand new You Don't Know Sports, a return to a classic podcast that we disbanded a few years ago. For those first-time listeners, let me introduce you to what You Don't Know Sports is. You Don't Know Sports is a collection of unknown sports stories or sports stories that you may have heard about but just need some clarification on. We will cover every single sport in the world, from Olympics to baseball to boxing to wrestling and everything in between. This week's episode may be a little bit short, but it's going to focus solely on one person and one person only. You Don't Know Sports this week will feature a baseball story, particularly the Cincinnati Reds' Marge should be Schott. Racism, bigotry, isolation, and loneliness. These words describe former Cincinnati Reds owner Marge Schott like no other. A rare figure in the world of sports. Not too many teams in any league, that would be Major League Baseball, the NHL, NFL, NBA, etc., have a woman owner. Yet, that is exactly what happened when Marge Schott, quote-unquote, saved the Reds from disbanding or moving. In the 1980s, the Cincinnati Reds were in a dire position, and Schott would end up buying the Reds, approximately 43% of their value, keeping them in Cincinnati and building them towards an eventual World Series title. To say Schott had anything to do with that success and rebuild would be like giving credit on a championship victory to the team janitor. Yes, he helped the team, in a way, but overall had very little impact on the outcome. Schott was a prolific and well-known racist and bigot, often being overheard shooting off racial slurs like a submachine gun on automatic fire. A woman of German descent, her aunt had 5 children fight for the German Wehrmacht during World War II. Schott was even quoted as saying this in a 1996 Sports Illustrated interview. Quote, "She, meaning her aunt, used to send us little Nazi soldier dolls with the swastikas and everything, honey. We used to play with them," says Schott. She even had a Nazi armband she kept in a bureau drawer in the hallway leading to her living room in her mansion. Schott says she's not really a Nazi sympathizer, although she once told ABC's Diane Sawyer that the armband, quote, "is not a symbol of evil to me," end quote. Mostly, it's a case of Schott not throwing anything away. Her antics and beliefs off the field were only the tip of the iceberg when it came to Marge Schott. She ran her ball club like a battleship turned into a recycling center. Everything was used to its fullest extent. No freebies of any kind. This even meant simple things like tissues were banned by the Cincinnati Reds. Privacy was also an afterthought. Schott would regularly ask for call logs regarding her players and employees and would even resort to opening mail and packages. Tight purse strings meant that every purchase had to have a minimum of 3 separate bids just to be approved by Miss Schott. Any check being written over $50 had to be personally approved by her for fear of being manipulated and being taken advantage of. At the time of her ownership, she employed the fewest number of front office staff in Major League Baseball, employing only 41 people at a time when most ball club owners used 100 or more. The cheapness didn't stop there. Schott didn't want to pay for a professional cleaning service for her office workers, so employees were tasked with cleaning themselves. It only gets worse. Schott would keep the lights off whenever possible, even if that meant your hallway or your office was connected to a hallway. You're not using the hallway? Turn the lights off. The carpeting in the office was also so old and worn, in places it had to be held together by duct tape. Schott would even go so far as to turn the heat down to 55 in the middle of the workday. Employees could often be seen bringing space heaters to compensate for the cold. Schott also eliminated the Reds' customer service and community relations departments. Her private secretary became fed up with Schott's antics and quit during the middle of a season. and for a year, Schott answered her own calls rather than hire a replacement secretary. Schott wasn't always tight with her money, and in some ways was a smart owner in that sense. Not to give any credibility to a person whose sole purpose in life seemed to be undermining those who already have it hard and criticizing everyone and everything around them. During her tenure as owner of the Reds, her players were consistently some of the highest paid in the majors. That is the only nice thing to say about her treatment of players. Schott wouldn't help the players outside of paying their salary. No extra uniforms, no video equipment to let players check past performances against certain pitchers and certain pitch types. And even after the Reds won the 1990 World Series, Schott didn't throw a congratulatory party for them and their achievement. Instead, she did nothing, and the best team in the world that year settled for going out for hamburgers at a local hamburger grill. Her one shining quote-unquote gift to Major League Baseball and the Cincinnati faithful was keeping prices down so her quote-unquote family, this is what she called Red fans, could see a baseball game at an affordable price. In the late 1980s and into the mid-90s, Schott and the Reds' most expensive ticket cost $11.50, the cheapest in Major League Baseball. Not to mention concession and food prices were also the lowest in the league, $1 for a hot dog at a Cincinnati Reds game. At a time when a hot dog could cost as much as $3 to $5 depending on what ballpark you were at, Schott and the Reds kept their hot dogs to a minimum, something unimaginable in today's Major League Baseball, which takes advantage of the fan and charges up to $10 to $20 for a single beer. Schott isn't always tight with her money. She did manage to contribute quite a bit to the Cincinnati Zoological Society, donating millions of dollars to help keep the zoo full of animals and up to date with the latest innovations. At the time of that day, though, Marge Schott is best remembered not for what she contributed to baseball. On the contrary, she gave very little to the game of baseball. But what she said and did in the name of baseball, she will be remembered for. Even with a 1990 World Series victory, Reds fans and others tested her managerial skills. Even after winning the NL Central Division in 1990, during the playoffs that year, one game saw Riverfront Stadium with 12,000 unsold seats and 8,000 unsold seats for yet another game. Yet Schott's impact on baseball was felt everywhere, mostly like an unwanted rash. From referring to earring-wearing men as quote-unquote homosexuals, to calling Dave Parker, a Reds outfielder from 1984 to 1987, her quote-unquote million-dollar nigger, to praising Hitler, saying he was okay and rebuilt roads and the like, he just, quote, went too far. To openly being an anti-Semite, calling Cincinnati marketing director Cal Levy a beady-eyed Jew. No one in Major League Baseball, or Cincinnati for that matter, misses the days when Marge Schott ran the Reds baseball team. Two former employees sum up the life and times of Marge Schott perfectly. Quote, "I think she is the single worst person I've ever known," says one longtime Reds employee. "Spiteful, mean-spirited, and evil," end quote. Says another former top-level employee, quote, "She's the most cold, calculating person I've ever known. To feel sorry for her is ridiculous," end quote. That is the end of our You Don't Know Sports story this week, all about Marge Should Be Schott. What is your opinion? Do you remember Marge Schott and her tenure as owner of the Cincinnati Reds? Do you think the success that the Reds experienced in the late 80s and early 90s makes up for her poor managerial skills? Or do you think just that she was a horrible human being that took advantage of everyone and everything around her? Let us know in the comments below. Once again, I am your host, SlimmDa KID, and this is You Don't Know Sports. Be sure to tune in next week for a brand new episode. It could be a short story or two, or could be an episode solely dedicated to one sports figure or moment in time.